Hi everyone, it's Jessica. Thank you for coming by today to watch. I am participating in the Craft IQ challenge, which is basically a recipe type challenge where we are given 7 different layers to include in our project. So one of those layers is to mat your photos in black cardstock, and another is to use a piece of yellow pattern paper as your background, and then also to use your photos in a grid style format. So I've already kind of pulled a couple of things and prepped a couple of things, as well as pulled some of these pattern papers from my stash and a piece of black cardstock just to get things started. So my thought was that I would use these little photos. I did print them at a 2-inch square and then cut them down just slightly so that I could mat them on that black cardstock and make them end up being 2 inches when I was done with that. And I thought that I would just layer them around in this grid like this, along with some scraps from my stash. So when I put all that on my piece of yellow pattern paper, though, it just is a little bit lost and small. So I'm thinking about layering that white square with one of these other pattern papers and maybe even that black cardstock. So that's just something that I'm thinking about, and I will get back to that step in just a second. But first, what I'm going to do is take this square. I believe I cut it at 7 inches. So that way when I put my photos and papers down, I would have a 1-inch margin all the way around. I decided to edge distress it. So I grabbed my edge distressing tool and just went around the edges just to give it a little something extra. It's not super noticeable, but I like to look for places to add those little tiny details. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to stick it down to my Versamat here. I love working on this thing because it helps me keep everything straight. And especially with this grid of photos, I thought, yeah, these are going to need to go down straight because if anything is crooked, this is going to go terribly wrong pretty quickly. So I used my T-square ruler on the edge of that Versamat. And then, like I said, I had figured out mathematically that I needed a 1/4 inch between everything, and so that helped me to put it all down. So I did decide to put my photos in the center of each of the rows, and then as I was putting down my pattern papers, I had 2 of them that were in that lagoon color, 2 that were in the nectarine color, and then just the 1 that was in the green apple color. So I spread out those 2 lagoons to opposite corners and then the 2 nectarines to opposite corners as well. So I was thinking about that and did it on purpose. Okay, now that I have this piece, I can definitely tell it's going to need something behind it just to make it stand off of that page a little bit. I liked that black and white piece of pattern paper because it brought in some of the black from my photo mats. But I think that it still needs a little something else. So this is from a 6x6 paper pad that I have. And any supplies that are available, I will link down below. But for this project, I really was grabbing a lot of things from my stash. It seemed like a good way to use up some of those smaller pieces of paper that I still had laying around. I cut that into a 2-inch strip, 2 of them, and then I'm going to tuck them behind my square this way. And yes, I definitely like that. I think that it just kind of helps to add a little bit more to that page. There's a whole lot of yellow going on with that pattern paper there as the base. I don't know if you guys ever participate in recipe challenges where you're given like a list of things that you either need to include on your layout or, techniques that you need to incorporate. I really like creating around them because I think it takes some of that decision-making process away, and it's kind of fun to see where your layout goes when those decisions are already done for you. But sometimes it could definitely be a bit of a challenge. For me, I didn't mind using the yellow pattern paper, but then it was a struggle knowing I had to have the grid of photos because it was like, well, what photos do I have that I can print small enough to put them in a grid and then also still work with that yellow pattern paper as well. So this was a little bit of a challenge, but once I got to this point here, I was feeling it so much better. So I have a couple of pieces of cardstock and die cuts that I'm just playing with and kind of moving around the page. I like that green apple one that has the scallop circle. And then another element that I have to include for this challenge is some acrylic. So I went through my stash and pulled anything I had that was acrylic. And then I also have to fussy cut something. So this is the current August stamp of the month from Close to My Heart, and it has a lot of teaching and school icons on it, and I've already stamped a bunch of those, so I think I might color and fussy cut some of those out and use them as embellishments. I also went into my Cricut and using the art booking cartridge from Close to My Heart, I cut this title. It says Ready, Set, Go, and I cut it in black cardstock 3 times because I'm going to glue it all together, and then that way it just has a little bit more substance to the page. And then I also on that same cartridge found this little, it looks like the edge of a torn notebook paper, and I thought maybe I could tuck that in somewhere as well, just for something else. Just why not? Thought I could cut it, and I like how it goes right there. I was contemplating the top or the side, but my 11-year-old daughter came in and made that executive decision and said, she said it has to go there on the right side. That's where I want you to put it. So that's where it went. Okay, here you can see that title that I've glued together. It definitely has a lot of height to it once you cut it out 3 times and glue it together. And again, using that Versamat and T-square ruler, I will figure out where this is going to be straight and get that glued down to my page. I did move it up a little bit just because I find it easier to hook my T-square ruler more so towards the center or up a little bit rather than down by a corner. And then that way I could still get a straight line across the bottom of my page. Okay, aren't these little icons so cute? There's like a notebook and a stack of books and like a cup that has like pen and pencil and ruler and highlighter in it, as well as a couple of apples. I used my tri-blend markers to color and shade all of those in off camera. And then, like I said, another layer for this challenge was to fussy cut something. So I'll just go ahead and do this one piece with you, and I'll get the other ones done off camera. But my thought is that I could put them in those other squares that don't have photos and move them around the page that way as my embellishments. So I'm really liking this cute little apple and this cup here. So I'm going to put those together in one little cluster. And I will glue everything except for the apples flat to the page, but then the apples I'm going to put on some 3D foam. And I thought that that would be a fun way to make them stand out. So, okay, so I'm happy with that part so far. And I'm looking back at my list to see, crossing stuff off. I love crossing things off of a list. Do you guys love to do that? Sometimes I'll even put things on a list just so I can cross it off if I've already done it. But I have to use my acrylic still and buttons and ribbon somehow. Those are the 3 things that I have left to incorporate here. Okay, so from my acrylic stash, I have pulled these red and orange stars. I just have the red apples so far, so I thought it would be fun to work in a little bit more red. And then I do like the orange pattern paper that I have in there. And then also there's like a little bit of a yellow orange in that sign behind my son in the one photo. So I thought that those would be 2 good colors to try to pull in just a little bit more. So I'm kind of playing around for a little while with where I might want to put them. Thinking about a visual triangle and also colors too. So kind of thinking about the red and the apples and so forth, and where those will go. And like I said, I'm going to put those apples up on some foam tape with these little dots that were just the perfect size. So I'll take a second to get that part done. And then that will pop up right over top of it, over top of that notebook and that little cup of supplies. I really love this particular stamp set. It is like a teaching themed stamp set, but obviously you can see some of these little items would be perfect for a school themed layout as well. You wouldn't have to be a teacher to use it. All right, I do like to adhere my acrylic with just some liquid Tombow glue, but glue dots would work just as well. And now I am down to buttons and ribbon. And if you can see my sticky note, I don't know how well you can see it, but there is a little smiley face next to the buttons because I love using buttons on my cards and my scrapbook layout. So I was really excited to see that that was one of the things for the Craft IQ challenge this month. This is a little button jar that I keep in my craft room. And they're just buttons kind of from all over, a lot of things from Joann's in here, or, if I have a button fall off a piece of clothing and, or the extra ones that come sometimes, I just throw them in there. So I've used green buttons and have kind of put those around, and I'm going to include those in the clusters where I've got those red and orange stars. So kind of like my acrylic pieces, I like to put a little dab of liquid glue on there to hold it in place first. But I have a thing about buttons. I think that they need to be sewn on and have some thread in them. So off camera, I will stitch those to my page with some green embroidery thread. Okay, and then I didn't realize I hadn't hit record, but I did cut out the letters DK from some thin cuts there, and that stands for developmental kindergarten because that's what my photos are about here. And I stuck a little bit of black ribbon up in the top there, and so I'm just kind of going through and checking for myself. Yes, I think I have all 7 layers. So this was really a lot of fun. Like I said, at first the yellow and the grid of photos kind of really stumped me a little bit, but once I got going on this layout, I really enjoyed how it came together. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching. There are some other crafters who are participating in this challenge, so make sure to check out their links down below. Thank you so much for coming by and have a great day. Happy crafting. Bye.